Today, as you can tell, we're going to talk about giving. And you'll always hear this in my episodes from time to time. You'll always hear it from time to time. If I told you a million times, stop exaggerating. Giving. Sounds pretty obvious, right? There is a saying in the universe that is, you get back what you give. The Hindus believe in karma. Lots of religions believe in karma. Most of us do believe in karma, even if our local pope doesn't believe that we should believe in karma. And sadly, I don't know if the stuff actually works. I think it kind of works, but it's very subtle if it does. I always tell my friends who are looking for revenge on a bad person, I say, well, I think karma works, but it never shows up when you want it to. You know, it's belated. We'll see. I sort of think a lot of evil people in the world are doing just fine. But why do a topic on giving? Don't we all understand giving? Yeah. And maybe you think of giving, you think of finding some homeless person and giving them a sandwich or the shirt off your back or a little bit of money to eat. And that's certainly giving, and not a bad thing to do from time to time. But the other part of giving is just to randomly do it. You know, and they have this whole initiative about 10 years ago called the Random Acts of Kindness, and you run around and give away stuff. And then about a few years ago, the YouTube had sort of a pay it forward mentality where you give someone something and you just tell them, do this for someone else. I think all that works, all that's great. But I think some of us struggle from time to time with when to give and when not to give in our own consciousness. And you know what? There's no rules. It's all up to you. I'm not going to give you any rules about when to give and when not to give. I'm just going to encourage you to find a way to do it. But again, why do the episode on such a thing? Well, we're all sort of not talking about it. Every once in a while you get into a debate about giving money to a homeless person. Someone's had a bad experience, you give money and they run over and get some booze. I kind of say, so what? So what they run off and get some booze? Now, as long as they don't get belligerent in public and hurt somebody, hey man, I think life kind of sucks when you're homeless, right? And you don't know which stage of homelessness the person's in. Are they in the beginning stage when everything's really, really tough and they haven't figured out how to exist in the world without shelter? Maybe then the booze is more important. And then as they calm down and they find a little click and they don't worry about sleeping at night, maybe they realize the booze was just a crutch for a temporary amount of time and they use their money to get better clothing and maybe eat better and then finally pull themselves out in the end and get a job. I lived in San Francisco region for 12 years and I have seen almost every incarnation of homeless person you could possibly imagine. The good, the bad, and the super duper ugly. So we'll get into that. But I don't want to go to the extreme of the obvious. Oh, a person doesn't have a home. Well, of course, so they need something just to kind of tide them over. And a lot of you are probably going, no, dude, screw those guys. They need to learn the mother of invention by pressure. I don't disagree with that as well. I agree with you completely. We need to keep the motivation of life going. The giving I'm talking about is randomly doing it. I'm going to tell you right now, if I hadn't given things away, like real things, not a few bucks here and there, although I've had some really great experiences giving away $5, you know. If I hadn't given away my technical capabilities, my artistic capabilities, I can tell you right now, 2/3 of my life would be erased. And the amount of people that I have met, that I've had these incredible experiences with, and I will have incredible experiences probably until we all pass away, would be erased. Maybe even 90% of my friends would go away. In fact, I can tell you, 90% of my friends would probably disappear off the planet Earth. My writing mentor wouldn't exist in my life, you know, and just all my buddies who have mentored me over the years, and we share and revere each other's art and accomplishments, it wouldn't exist because it all started with me giving them some of my services for free. And sometimes I'll give it to friend number 1 and he knows friend number 2. And so I get introduced because I gave away something. I will warn you, if you're a really heavy duty professional and what you do in your day life is really intense and you give away a smaller task, like I was I don't mean to say this to boast or anything, but I was a pretty decently successful executive with lots of people working for me. But I would give away on the side web work because I wanted to know how to do it, so I give away a website. I do design for one of the most incredible designers on planet Earth and then give it to him for free. And then he started paying me, Actually, one of them always demanded to pay me because he just knows that doesn't really work out in the end. And he had a volunteer bail on him. And so we actually started off fairly amicably in a business arrangement. But it just continues and continues. You give away a little bit more, and hopefully you're giving away something you love to do in the first place, right? So many of my friends will sit there and say, this is exactly what I want to do with my life. And I say, awesome, man, you're lucky. But they won't do it when they come home. And they won't do it for any reason other than getting paid for it by their company that pays them to do it. And I guess I can see sort of the financial reason to do that. But in the end, if you love it, like if you're an interior designer, well, your house should be surrounded by your artwork. At least your office should be surrounded by the next thing, the next amazing look that you're designing from scratch. And you can't stop designing and matching things together because it's what you love, I've had the opportunity to write films for myself and, some pretty well-known people, and it's because I started doing it on my own because it was my love. Who's going to pay a rookie to write a film? Oh, have you never written a film before? Well, you should write my film then because it'll be a good experience for you and you'll really enjoy it. No. It's hell and back every time you go, and it's an exhilarating roller coaster, but you got to get your skills going. But the giving will open up your life, and it will open up who you are as a human being. And, this will be one of the ones where I don't really have a lot of specifics for you particular, the viewer, the listener. But I'm hopefully going to shake your mind a little bit about the art of giving. I don't know how the universe is put together, but I think there's a lot of hidden beauties to the universe in terms of intellectual consciousness concepts, which is why I don't believe we're just a bag of chemicals in a brain. Because of karma, and maybe this is manifest destiny as well, sort of the what the bleep do we know universe, or for some of you, The Secret, where you sort of pick the next second of your life. Remember the pachinko ball analogy out of the time travel episode? You might actually choose the next second of your life. Choose the next state of the universe. If it's infinitely and densely packed with all futures, you might actually be picking the one that you want to go to. And if you get super duper negative in your life, maybe you pick a negative path. And then if you're happy and jovial all the time, you pick a really good path. How many times have you known someone that is sort of a habitual victim of life? They're not, maybe they're just awkward. They're awkward in the way they look, the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they think. And they just always are sick. And they're always the butt of misfortune. I know tons of people like this. All right? And it just seems that whatever they do, they just pick the next worst thing that could happen to them. It's like Breaking Bad times 2. And the weird thing is that some of them, I know personally, they get involved in scams. And, I don't know them as my best friends or anything, but I've seen, sisters of girlfriends and stuff like that they don't want to work anymore. They've just allowed themselves to get ridiculously overweight and just depressed. And so what they do is they slip and fall at work, and then they drag that out forever to get disability. Oh, my back hurts. I got this phantom back pain. Back pain's just one of these random things. They can take x-rays and x-rays of your body, and you're perfectly fine in your vertebrae system and your lumbar system. And if you just claim you have pain, boy, the state can't do anything about it. Your workman's comp's going to be drained, and lawsuits can be fought forever. I had a buddy of mine had the tip of his thumb cut off in a freaking recycling machine. The tip of his thumb cut off. Of course, he's a goddamn troll. He grew the whole thing back almost. But the tip of his thumb got cut off. And what did he get, like $5,000, something like that? Ridiculous. Nothing. But I've got people that are totally uninjured claiming that they're injured simply because life is just this big depressing loop. You know? Why do I mention? Well, I think those people could give their way out of that problem. And I know that sounds stupid, but anytime I've ever felt slightly exhausted of things to do, not physically exhausted, but exhausted of like, what am I going to do with my life? You know, I've done all that stuff already. All the things I ever dreamed about up to a certain, mega moment, I've done. And so what am I going to do? And so at that stage, I would just pick something, get involved, and find a reason to give it away, Right now, if I said, let's give things away, let's give our labor and time away, I think that the most natural instinct, if you have a resistance to what I just said, would be you quoting back my own phrase, which is time is money. And it definitely is money, to the consciousness bank. Maybe not to the monetary bank. You only get this particular vessel once. Even if I believe in reincarnation over and over and over, and I happen to look almost exactly the same every time I come back, I only get these particular memories and this identity and this group of friends and this location and this time period once. To have it again would be there's a dude right next to me playing the repeater game, right? Doesn't happen. So if I say give something away, it depends on how your bills are, but what's really interesting about saying I'm broke, I can't afford to give things away, I'm going to tell you, I want you to remember the hand in the cookie jar analogy. You got your hand on the cookie jar of what you think is the most, how should I say this? The closest chance you have to pulling yourself out is the cookie in the cookie jar. And what I like to say, folks, is that, the other half of the hand in the cookie jar, and I think I maybe saw this in a photograph, is that behind you is a mountain of cookies. But the paradigm of how you're thinking about things is keeping you focused on this one opportunity. You're kind of all eggs in one basket mentality. And that's dangerous. Now, you do need to finish what you start from time to time, right? And I've had relatives of mine that were quitters, and I've seen them start something, be really talented at it. Everything they created up to a certain point was brilliantly executed, and then they quit. I don't know what it is. They get bored or whatever, or they get afraid that they can't finish, and they quit. I think it's usually just a short attention span thing. And then what's odd about those people is they can read books like crazy. They can read 800-page books in a week, and they can't finish some little side project off to the side. I guess it's boredom. I guess it's a lack of vision of where that could go. When you give, something amazing happens. And the more empathetic you are, what I'm about to say is going to be the wonderful, wonderful experience you're going to have when you give. I'm going to go through some categories of where you can give in just a second. When you truly give, all right, a couple factors are usually in place. The person you're giving to, or the group you're giving to, doesn't expect it at all. And the more random you can make it, the better what I'm about to say will happen. Now, I wouldn't just randomly give anything to anyone necessarily, unless you've got some time to spare or you can execute it very quickly. Some people are not appreciative. Some people are in such a bad moment in their life that they think maybe it's charity and they'll be defensive. You have to be prepared for every response that's out there. Now, there's a critique out there against giving to homeless people simply to make yourself feel better, and you're not really giving it to them for their benefit. So you can't get into that situation. This is the act of making someone else's life better. This isn't an act of purely making yourself feel better, but that's part of the game. Part of the game is a 50-50 split. You're going to hopefully make them feel better, and you're going to make yourself feel better. In the end, the universe rewards you with opportunity. Like I said, the universe has got this interesting fabric of consciousness. We have all these laws of physics, equal and opposite reaction, that sort of stuff. Well, there's the same thing on the level of consciousness, which is not tracked by physics. Which is why I think when we subtract consciousness as its own fabric of existence, we become robots. We become left brain, Prussian education robots that don't deserve to exist. The reason why we deserve to exist is because we engage the consciousness. We feel love. We feel empathy and sympathy and all those things. That's where we earn the right to exist. Because without that relationship in full activity, in full realization, there's no reason to be here. There's dirt all over the universe. That's what we become when we don't have consciousness. We just become dirt. And believe me, I don't care what the universe is made out of. There's no reason for it to exist other than to support things with consciousness. But when you give, hopefully you create some sort of relief in someone. It's a surprise. It is a person that maybe, if you can orchestrate it from time to time, try to find someone who's actually down and out, someone who just needs help. And you don't need to travel far away. That's one of the most beautiful things about a relationship with someone is this constant back and forth of give and take. And believe me, I've dated people that only take. And when you're a giver, it seems kind of fun for the first little while, and then you realize, wow, this person never thinks about me. They only think about what I'm going to, or unless it's, what's this person going to do for me again. And they never think about giving to me backwards. And I've had the most atheist people be total takers, which you might assume, but I've also had the most religious people who talk about God's forgiveness and God's sympathy and God just can't walk across the street without it being God's miracle, but they never give. It's interesting. So there's no one has the dibs on this on this giving thing. So let's be the people that do, right? So what are the areas of giving? I mentioned homeless people, and I had a couple experiences this year, and maybe one last year, that was utterly profound for me. And what I haven't done typically is I've given to a couple guys at the end of highway exits. They're standing there with their son. I sort of have to look them up and down a little bit and read their eyeballs. And they're trying to play me, obviously. They're trying to give me the sympathy puppy dog face. But what I like to do is watch them when the traffic goes, and I'm still behind another trough of sheep that's waiting for the light to turn. And I like to see when their face drops, when they turn around and walk the other way, and then they kind of turn around and reset their emotions. And I really like to look at that sort of mezzanine character that's, I think, a little bit closer to who they really are, and then I'll kind of break every once in a while. But the people that are out there soliciting are the ones that I give less to, and maybe I shouldn't. But the two that I've given to in the last couple of years, I was at Arby's in one scenario, and I was at a Wendy's in another scenario. And I was in an Arby's, and a guy came in the door, a really old guy, but he looked like Mick Jagger. It was crazy. He's wearing almost like, I swear to God, he almost like $200 jeans on, right? Must have got to Goodwill and found something, but it was like a really bright outfit. But he was messed up in the head. He came in with a cup, and he asked the manager, "Can I fill this up with water?" And the manager said, "Yeah." And of course, he went up and he was trying to tap something with sugar. And he tapped it with some orange drink, and then he sort of played it off like, "Oh, oops, I didn't mean to do that." No one's paying attention to the guy. He could have filled it up with Coke and walked out the door. I'm sure the manager would have traded a little bit of Coke to have him out the door. But he goes in and he sits down. It's a really small Arby's, the front end of a small old barn-looking Arby's we have here in Huntington Beach. Must be like 10 feet away from me. And I'm watching the guy, and he's at this stage in his life, he's talking to himself, And he's not hurting anybody. He doesn't smell awful or anything, which was good. He just wasn't with it. And I could see he was very thin, so I'm assuming he wasn't eating well. Who knows? And I seldom have cash on me, although I'm doing it more and more as time goes on. But for whatever reason, I had about $4 on me, and ones, obviously. And I'm finishing my meal, and I just kind of keep my eye on the guy. And I could see a sweetness to his character, right? He wasn't being, outwardly solicitive to other people. And so as I'm on my way out, I basically took my wad of cash out of my pocket. In one fluent motion, I just slapped the $4 down on his table, and I said, get yourself something to eat. And this dude absolutely just started crying, and he just kept saying, in front of the whole thing, it was like, unfortunately, more people had piled in since this guy sat down. So I hate to be exhibitionistic with any sort of giving. If I could just slip it into his bank account and he wouldn't, he would know it, then it would be great. If he get a little notice on his cell phone or something. So I sipped it, and I'm just bolting for the door. I'm like, I'm not going to let this be some, glory moment for myself. How noble of me, right? Anyway, I slipped this to him, and he's freaking out. He's very quiet about it, but he's like, God bless you, oh my God. And he turns the next week, goes, did you see that? Oh my God, and he goes up to get food. I was like, wow, that's cool. That he was willing to just immediately translate it into food. He must have been starving, right? So I walk out, and I leave, and that's it. And then I was at a Wendy's, and a very similar situation, but this guy really was not smelling too good, and he was over there by himself, and I was eating my food, and he had managed to get some little like fry or something, and who knows what the hell he was drinking, and he just kept kind of looking at me the whole time, and not giving me any baby eyes or anything, if anything, almost like kind of a little bit of a creepy eye. And when he exited, he came right by me, and I think I'd have like a $5 bill or something available, and I just gave it to him. And I said, again, I just repeated myself because I'd just done it, a few months before, and I said, just get yourself something to eat. And again, he was much more quiet for me, which was good. He just said, thank you so much, oh my God, and he went up and got food, right? So a couple of those experiences, and I've done a few more like those when I see someone buying something. I was at a Chili's once, and a guy at the end of the bar just wanted to come in, and it was cold as hell outside, but he wanted a scoop of ice cream because I guess it's really good ice cream. It's really cheap, so he wants to come in just a little scoop, and they're all being really nice to the guy. I mean, these guys at Chili's here in HB were really good to him. And he was trying to find the money and trying to count out a bunch of pennies. So I just told the bartender, I said, I'll get that guy's tab over there and tell him to get something to eat. And I don't know what the hell he got, but he wasn't sure who did it, which was good. That was even more my style, right? So those are like low-hanging fruit techniques that all of us can do. But that one's a little more subjective, right? Because we don't want to have a whole society of homeless people. But I think if you vet sort of the tension points in these individuals, where they look like they're really suffering, right? I think you can find some pretty good candidates to give to. Just my take on things, right? Now let's talk about donating real quick. I tell my friends all the time, I say, you should give your clothes away. Give your stuff away every once in a while. And I said, and people get, some people are like, yeah, I do it all the time, man. It's great. And some of my friends reel back. Oh my God, I couldn't possibly give away all my stuff. And I said, well, I'm not telling you to get rid of your favorite leather jacket that you had when you were 17. It brings back all those memories of partying when you were a kid. But there's a lot of incidental crap that we have. And I said, look, here's the cool thing. If you give away your clothes, you get to go get new clothes. And so you get the new stuff, and they get stuff that's hopefully not completely worn out. I think that's the key. There's some things that the Goodwills here in America and the Salvation Army in America, I don't know if those things are in other countries, but they won't take it because it's, they won't take your underwear, for instance. I don't think they take your socks unless they're brand new in a package, right? But That's a good little regimen as well. And again, these are all low-hanging fruit techniques of giving. We're going to get into the high-end stuff here in a second. When the grunge thing started up in the 90s, there was this sort of really crappy trend that I watched happen, and I had a relative that got into this as well, and it was that they would all go to the Salvation Armies and Goodwills to buy clothing. And in one way, they thought they were sticking it to the man. And I guess in a very small way, they were sticking it to a corporation. But I think the corporation was laughing their ass off because these people who were doing it were sticking it to all the people who are less fortunate in the world, right? They would go into these, these thrift stores, or these donation stores, and they'd pick out the very best that was available in those stores, cleaning out the place of the most wearable items, the most, the most attractive stuff, so that when the homeless guy comes in there, the family doesn't have any money, comes in there, they had to get the super crappy stuff, And I thought that was just a bad idea. And luckily, that particular trend didn't exist for that long. Now I've got friends that dress in the 70s, and they pay a lot of money to get reprints of old clothing. And they will buy clothing that's old, but it's being sold by a particular vendor that's actually charging quite a bit of money for it, because they've scavenged this stuff off the earth, And again, a homeless person is not going to necessarily go in and want to get a polyester shirt made in 1978, right? Let's talk about professional stuff. We know that nowadays, unless you work for a state institution in America, you actually have to get more skills as time goes on, because whatever you know is going to expire, right? That means that you need to figure out what you need to learn. Then you need to get the materials to learn it, a book, a class, whatever it is, a buddy. And then you have to find a project to exercise those capabilities. And this has been the utter repeating format of my entire life, which is I want to know how to do something, so I'm going to get a project. And when I was a kid, my first, probably the only thing I didn't do initially with a project was art. Everything else got into a project. My uncle taught me how to program. He was making a video game in the front room, and he needed an artist to draw artwork in these binary blocks. And so he sat me down at a table at 11 years old and said, "This is how you count in binary. This is how I need you to draw everything on graph paper. This is how you cut it up into blocks. This is how you transfer those blocks into binary numbers." And it was on a Texas Instruments 99.4A. And I misquoted horribly the computer I had in the last episode. It wasn't a Texas Instruments color computer. It was a TRS-80 color computer. I got to do a geek correction on that, because some of you guys went, "What? That thing you just said doesn't exist." And you would be right. Super bonus points for you if you figured that out. But since then, like when I was a kid, I'd make a video game every time I wanted to learn how to program, every single time. But I also had my father wanted a label maker. He wanted an inventory database system. It went on and on and on, right? I had to take note cards at school in one of my classes. And so I made a note card generator that saved it to disk. It was cool. Floppy disk, that is. So the format that you're going to use when you give professionally is to figure out what skills you already have. And I suggest you do the ones that are super, super simple for you right away. So if you're a carpenter and you've been a carpenter for 20 years, then you can give away some carpentry. Because for you, it's no skin off your back. If you go to your neighbor's house and you happen to, drink a beer outside, and you go like, "Hey, can I use your restroom?" And they're like, "Yeah." And you go to the restroom, you try to close the door, and the damn thing doesn't fit in the door jamb, or it's 3 inches off the ground, and someone keeps sawing the top of the door off, and you're like, they need a new door. Maybe they don't have enough money for a new door, but you're a carpenter, and you know where there's doors available for nothing, and you just volunteer a little bit of cash, or you give it to them at cost, and you're like, "Dude, I'm going to fit this into your house. It's going to be great. We're going to paint it white, match your walls, and it's going to be great." You need to understand that when you do any type of action of giving, you are teaching the recipient the quality of giving, as they feel this euphoria of someone doing something for nothing. relatively speaking, and they feel wonderful, the pay it forward formula most of the time embeds itself in that individual and they move forward. Like I said, I know plenty of people that take, and they just can't get enough. And unfortunately, we do have an entitled society because we raise kids with crazy toys that they don't need and they don't technically deserve, But projects are the way to go. The other thing is that what you're getting out of it is skills. You are getting skills that will make you better at what you do. And so I just want to embed this in whatever career you're dealing with, because a lot of times when you're, I'll just say if you're a software engineer, whatever programming language maybe you get, 2 years competitively out of whatever language you're doing, unless you're an amazing engineer architect, and you can take those simple languages and make something else out of those languages that nothing else does. Then you become a valued asset as to how you use the language, right? So there are exceptions to the rule, but we have to relearn and resmith all of our knowledge for these new languages. Right now, Apple Computer has pretty much ditched Objective-C, which is their previous Smalltalk derivative language, and they're going for something called Swift. And I'm learning it right now. Well, if I just sit around reading books and doing the little sample chapters out of there, it's sort of out of context, and I'm not really stressing the language much because in the book, they've written all the code for me. It's not really doing anything industrial strength. So I'll pick something that is much tougher to do, and I'll do that with the lessons I've learned from the book. And so that's the way I push myself through a language. And then it becomes exciting to do it, Now, I don't have anyone who needs something written in Swift, but if I had a neighbor that needed an application or their business was hemorrhaging cash because the software that they bought off the shelf was horrible, well, I might offer to put something together if they happen to run a Mac computer. Or if anyone uses the web. My karaoke guy, for instance, I'll give you a couple examples of the stuff I've done. I've never karaoke'd in my life until a few years ago, and I've always been a singer. But I hadn't done it in like a restaurant with a microphone, right? And so a guy lured me into it, and I did it, and it was cool. And I started going to this really cool restaurant we have in Huntington Beach called Rockin' Crepes. It's like this 80s themed restaurant that serves crepes. Like they're savory and sweet. It's amazing. And so I started going a lot. There was a few things I did at this restaurant just because I loved the restaurant, right? And in the end, you do get like free food every once in a while. I ate for free for probably a year, and I was the one that volunteered to pay again. But my karaoke guy kept dragging these giant books to karaoke, and they're teeny tiny print. No one can read it. It's in the dark anyway. And so it was just sort of like he always had people coming up to him asking him does he have this song? Does he have that song? So I wrote a little web application where I took all those 75,000 songs, stuck it in a database, made it searchable by artist or by song, and boom. He said, go to my website, click this link, and you can search on the songs that are in my database. Boom. 1-to-1, book's gone, problem solved, right? Then the restaurant, which was put together about 5 years ago at the time, which is 7 years now, they had a black wall. This is like a restaurant where kids come, play games. All the tables have all this crazy artwork on them, cut out newspapers and stuff from the 80s, and the ceiling is all painted, and it's just kind of neat. But this one wall was a black wall with a chain link fence on it, with hazard signs, biohazard signs and stuff, trying to look hardcore, but not 80s rock, unfortunately. It was more like a FEMA camp wall. But I would sit at the bar, eating this amazing food at really low calories, and I'd watch these families pull up their vans. And it's a strip mall, so they got some choices, and they'd stick their head inside. The father would come and stick his head inside, look left, look right. He sees a bar on the right, chain link fence on the left. It's black. We're talking about a 40-foot wall that's black. And they'd turn around and leave. And the owner would stand there right there. He's a guy from Brooklyn. He's like, I hate it when they do that. What's wrong with my place that they won't come in and sit down? So I'm looking at this from like a video game standpoint. I'm thinking, well, dude, look at the tone of this room. It's dark. You got a black ceiling, a black wall. The rest of it's all lipstick red with sort of random stuff on the wall. I just don't think it's that inviting. And he's like, and I said, well, let me figure out something to do with your restaurant. Let's repaint at least that wall and figure out what should go on there. And they had this really cool sort of German font. This is it's like an old classic Gothic font. This is Rockin' Crepes, and they have two V guitars crossed on their logo out front, and some of their printed material has a skull in the middle, and they've been warned by marketing people that they do business with. The skull is not going to be that appealing to families, and they're right. So I went home and I designed a new wall where I blew this logo out beautifully, retraced it all, rebalanced out the font because I used to be a fontologist and create fonts, and I put two really cool Gibson V guitars in there, black, and I blew out on Photoshop. And then I went to the restaurant, took a photograph of the restaurant from one of the corners, and took it home and traced out that wall, and then laid my artwork against the wall and re-blew all the shadows out so it looked like it was really there in the restaurant. And I mailed it to his wife, and I said, look, this is what your restaurant can look like if we just lighten things up just a little bit. Immediately they said, do it. So there we go. Now, 2 months later, after we painted this wall a billion times to get rid of the black with this candy apple red, I took, a month to paint the guitars, and it turned out beautiful. And now the place is booming. Now people walk in and sit down, and now they want to sit underneath the guitars. And of course, you had your locals pissing and moaning. It doesn't look like a fucking prison still. I like the black wall. I'm like, yeah. And you don't like this restaurant to exist because that's the reason why the profit margins are up, I also took the menus, which hadn't been updated in years, tons of spelling errors, stuff is missing, we've canceled things off the menu, and I redrew those from scratch. And so now they're big, beautiful, two-faced menus, laminated, and it looks great. And now I've started redrawing some of the tables. Right? I put a little bit of effort in, and I probably saved, several $100s on food and beer. I could bring my girlfriend in and her kid at the time and eat for free. So I put a little bit of effort in, or maybe a lot of effort, and it was a reward for me because I got the chance to see my art skills. I hadn't painted anything in a really long time, and painting two guitars overlapping each other is a daunting task because you have to line up all the geometry of the pickups and the strings and everything and make the shadows look beautiful and all that kind of stuff. Just something I did to give, So the other interesting thing is about giving to people is that it allows you to sort of demonstrate who you are as a human being. A lot of you will know that you're a good person, and you can't convince anyone because everyone's so damn defensive nowadays. Everyone's so worried about terrorism, and they watch TV and movies where, the job of the writer is to create a unique situation of tension. And sadly, that is usually betrayal. Someone is untrustworthy. I think a lot of relationships are all screwed up nowadays because people think that their significant other is going to turn out like that person in the movie, or person on that television show, or the series on television. And it's sad because I think we're pretty monotone human beings in most cases. I've had a couple more restaurant experiences. One was another repeat of the one I just told you, where I just volunteered to help constantly, and I was doing lots of promo for magazines and that sort of thing. But it was like a damn near 4-star restaurant, and I got to eat for free after doing this stuff. And for me, I was just enjoying using Photoshop and sort of having stuff be published. I'd create like a whole insert or a cover for the magazine, the little magazine that goes around Huntington Beach or Orange County. And so I get to draw something that goes on the front of a cover, and it gets published 50,000 times. I guarantee you right now there's probably more than like 4 dozen copies of it still sitting in people's living rooms somewhere. Some hoarders got it in a pile because it's that important. But I had a buddy of mine who became my best friend, one of many, and he owned a restaurant. He's the gentleman who makes the amazing pizza. And a couple things happen. So I go in to eat this pizza, and it's amazing. I'm blown away. It is Brooklyn pizza right in my backyard, and not just Brooklyn pizza, but the one of the most famous Brooklyn pizzas in all of New York. And back in their heyday. And and I won't mention the name just in case they don't want it out there, but their pizzerias don't exist anymore because Sbarro's moved in and crushed them with corporate processed food. But I eat their pizza, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I noticed over on the side there, he had a table set up for catering. And I go look at all the business information on catering, and I've never dealt with catering in my life. And it was all hardcore. Like the business card was black with like red writing, and it was almost like I went to the website and had like diamond plate, artwork in the website. It was black, and I was like, dude, no bride is going to buy your services unless she thinks she's, marrying a rocker or something from the 80s, right? Or some punk rocker or some hugely dark, gothy person. And I said, dude, I've seen your restaurant. It's beautiful. It's Italian. It's amazing. So I went home without asking him. And I grabbed all the assets off the website, tons of photographs that were, must have been stored somewhere for 10 years. They all had turned yellow, and then they were scanned at yellow, put on the website as yellow, and it just looked awful. And so I took all the pictures down, and I color balanced them all back up, and they looked gorgeous, blew out the contrast, drew this beautiful, almost cosmopolitan, light, creamy, pastel version of the Italian flag. The whole thing was like a creamy cocoa. Laid it out with beautiful serif fonts, and it looked great. And I got it all finished. It was only about, 10 pages, lots of content in it about who he was and all that stuff. And so I came back to the restaurant because I was eating there like 3 or 4 times a day, or a week, And I finally said, dude, I redrew your website, and I want to show you what it looks like, and I want to get your access to your website so I can swap out this thing that's there. And he's like, good, because this lady's been gone for a few years. And she was a sweetheart. She gave me the login information. And he goes, okay, well, if you do this and it works out, I'll let you, you can eat here for free. I was like, awesome. Like I just got my dream meal for free. He wasn't aware I was already done. And so the next day I swapped this thing out. He goes to his website the next day. And this guy has never had anyone give him anything in his entire life. As he told me. Instantaneously, this thing shoots up to the top of every search engine. And it's number one at the top at the time before Google messed everything up. It was the top of Yahoo, top of Google, and top of, the MSN search thing that was out there. And all of a sudden the phone starts ringing. And in the first month, I think we cleared 36 leads. We got people walking in the door wanting to work at the place. And we said, well, how did you find us? And they said, I searched on Orange County Catering and you were number one. It was awesome for a while there. But right in the middle of that beautiful boom of business, he had a partner that sabotaged the company. He also had an employee embezzle about $30,000 out of the cash register. And, the State Board of Equalization, who takes care of taxes, figured that out. He figured it out. He's like, I'm really, really sorry. I've got someone who's stolen money from me. I've got a business partner that is doing everything he can to keep me in debt and get me in trouble, who's no longer part of the business. And so he goes, I'm digging this out. We have our catering business just exploded. Let me I'll get you taken care of. And I started participating as like a nightly manager. I'd come in and I'd cook pizzas and cook some of the meals, and then I would liaison with the customers and kind of get it. I'm programming video games during the day and then doing this at night, right? Just because it's fun. It's a fun thing to give away. Well, there was one moment at the beginning, and a couple months into this catering thing, that the state had come and threatened to literally put a chain on the door without, figuring out a negotiation on how to pay off this debt. So we negotiated, but before that happened, we're sitting there, and I said, well, how much do you need to keep the doors open, And he goes, well, I'm about $500 short. And I'm looking at him, and he knows my situation. I had moved down with tons of money and spent a ton of it trying to start a different business that didn't work out. And I wasn't really rolling in the dough at the time. I hadn't created my own game company at the time. I was just a few months away from, maybe a year technically, from actually starting my own company and getting rolling in dough again. And so I said, I'll give you my $500 just as early as you can pay me back. Just do it. And he knows I don't really have that money to be throwing around. But he just takes one look at me and he goes, he says, I can get the money from people. I just don't want to ask for it. And he goes, but just the fact that you were willing to give me what might be your last $500 out of your bank, he goes, we're going to be friends for a long time. And to this day, we're brothers, man. I mean, like, we have gone through thick and thin, and that catering thing just continued to explode until by the end of the year, that Christmas, he got the biggest catering job of his entire business. And he'd been doing it for quite a long time. And I brought in comedians and magicians and stuff for my walk of life. And we blew out this massive party. And then Google made a switch at the end of 2003 called the, I believe it was called the November update, because they were turning on ads. And so they completely screwed up the way you find a website. If you got a plumber next door who's the cheapest, most qualified plumber, Google will find someone who's paid $2 for an ad a million fucking miles away, and they don't have the skills that you need. It's just the way Google works nowadays. They can find any esoteric answer that you need on planet Earth, but when it comes to a paid service, you're never getting the closest and best, most likely, without someone shelling out dough. But if I hadn't given proactively, I wouldn't have one of the most amazing people in my life. And he introduced me to other people who were amazing, who are now part of my life, who I'm best friends with. I would take a bullet for them kind of guys. I mean, for real, and they would for me. And so that's the benefit. That's what I'm trying to say, is that the universe is almost beautifully balanced to give back what you put out. And I guess, as I've been told that, what was it, John Lennon, I even saw him say it on camera. It's not a profound thing, but when he went over and studied Hinduism, they taught him this karmatic loop. Maybe it was Paul McCartney actually said this, but the whole thing of you get back what you put out. And of course, some of these people have just done really well in their life, and they've worked really, really hard to do so. And they're just amazingly talented people. Not all of us are quite at that level in those particular areas, but a lot of us are rock stars in what we do. A lot of fathers out there who are great dads, great moms out there. You're really good at what you do, but there's just no cameras that follow you around. So somehow we feel less, I mean, is any actor really that amazing at what they do, that they're outdoing what you do and your technical capabilities, right? Maybe you're one of the most amazing accountants on planet Earth. Maybe you're the most incredible salesman on planet Earth. But again, maybe you're just a good person, and you might be outperforming these people that we admire all too much, right? I do believe that if we don't consciously discuss giving as a regiment of almost a food group of existence, then we're not going to do it as much as we would if we consciously thought about it. And again, if you have problems giving to homeless people, I get it. That's fine. Give it to somebody else. Give it to a close friend of yours. What's weird is, I've tried to encourage people over the years to give, and they really see dollar signs way too fast. And they stop giving to humanity because they see, well, I could make money someplace else. And it's like, okay, so you're the richest guy in the graveyard. Now what? You're this grumpy old cantankerous Scrooge who made a lot of money, and you took care of your ego, but you didn't take care of humanity. But you want to complain about how entitled humanity is, or how evil humanity is. And it's like, you know what? You can only live by example when it comes to giving. You can only flip the script by doing it yourself. And, there's some videos out there on the internet. There is this magician kid. And I think he's an Indian kid from India. He's all American, but I want to say his name is, it's like Bharat or something like that. But he does this incredible series of videos where he does these amazing magician things. In fact, if you look up Invisible Driver prank on YouTube, you'll find his stuff. And he started dabbling in this, with this emergency vehicle going by. He started dabbling in tricks with the homeless, and it was just endearing as hell. He would take a coffee, and he had filled the coffee cup with with coffee, and he had just a ton of change in it, and just tons of quarters and everything. And he started, you want to see a magic trick? And they're like, yeah. And so he would take this coffee cup and he'd just shake it in his hand. And I'm not sure, he has another alternate chamber down there, but somehow the coffee is draining out of the cup, and all these coins just to start pushing up through the coffee, and the coffee's gone, and it's just this dry cup of coins. And he gives them the coins. It's probably, $30-$40 in coins, and he gives them to either one guy or a bunch of people, and man, they just start weeping. And he finds a really good candidate to do this to, someone who's very appreciative, or a group of people. He took someone's dollar bill and flipped it into a 20, a trick one of my good friends, Jeffrey Bornstein, is amazing at doing. So he did some close hand work, and he continued this, and he started just feeling it. He started going, wow, this feels good. I'm actually changing someone's life, not only making people on the internet to the tune of millions of people. He's got 3.5 million subscribers. But I think he felt it, And then he did a really, really cool trick where he went out to a guy. He set this trick up at a local convenience store, and he said, look, here's what I'm going to do. He goes, I'm going to tell the guy he's won something on a scratch off. And I guess they got a lot of scratch offs, and they managed to find one with a combination where something worked out. And he goes, I'm going to give you $1,000, and you're going to, when he comes in to give this to you to see if he's a winner, you're going to say he won, and you're going to give him $1,000. Absolute homeless dude on a curb. So he finds this guy sitting on the curb, and I think maybe he'd done a trick with this guy before, and he realized this guy was just really sweet. He needed a lot more than a cup of change. And I think he even got his story, But he took the guy into the convenience store, and sure enough, gave him $1,000. And this guy was like, oh my God. He just could not process having $1,000 to his name. And of course, he wants to give the dude who set this thing up some of the money. He's like, no, you got to take some of this money. This was your ticket, and he's like, no. He goes, I gave it to you. This is for you. I don't need money. You're good. And the guy just starts weeping. He can't hold on to it. And there's videos out there where people buy people fast food, and they film it, and these people do the same thing. And it's difficult not to feel an empathetic bone. If you don't feel anything when you watch these videos, there's something that's broken inside you that needs to get fixed. But I would assume most of our listeners have a capability of feeling something. Now, that doesn't account for someone who's had a bad experience with a homeless person trying to mug you or something. That's a little bit different. But anyway, so this video goes out, and it goes unbelievably viral. Some of you have probably seen it. He then starts this service where they're going to raise money for him, and I don't know which one of those fundraising services they use, but they opened up a service, and I think they raised something like $45,000 for this guy. And so the dude, and of course he's doing it behind the other guy's back, because there's no way for him to, he's got to look for him on the street to find out where he is, But he doesn't lose contact with this dude. And so then he goes and prearranges another thing. With that money, he goes and rents an apartment for a year. I think it was at least a year, if not more. Gets it totally furnished, full of a bed, a kitchen, everything, right? And this guy's living on the streets, man. He's getting beat up at night trying to find a place to sleep. So he finds the dude and gets him in his car. And of course, the guys want to go with him because he's like, man, last time I was with you, I got $1,000. And he's like, well, here's the situation. Your video went viral. I raised a bunch of money for you. I got something for you. Surprise. So he takes the dude into this apartment. And the dude, obviously, he thought he might maybe get $1,000 again. He's like, this is paid for 1 year. And your groceries there's a fund in a bank. Here's your ATM card. You can go get money and fill your kitchen full of food. It was already full of food already. And he said, this is your new start. This is your chance to make it good again. And not only did that guy go off and get a job and get right off the streets, right? For those of us who worry about homeless people that won't get off the streets if we give them a buck, this guy got a job. I don't think it was prearranged, but maybe it was. And he did that to somebody else. How cool is that? I think he did the $1,000 trick to one of his buddies on the street. Phenomenal, you know? And there's been all these videos. I know you guys have 100 videos where someone gave someone money and they thought they were going to buy a bunch of booze, and the guy goes to the convenience store and fills up all these carts with stuff, and they didn't quite track what he put in the bags, and he's walking across town with these brown bags, and they're like, oh my God, he's got a bunch of booze. He's going to sit in some park and get wasted. Instead, the guy went to a park where all of his homeless buddies were. He bought everybody food. Not only did he bought the money, bought himself some food, but he knew to pay it forward by giving other people food. He knows the suffering and the empathy of their suffering. Interesting, right? No matter how your life is, giving is the key to having a good time. And even if you think your life is miserable, I guarantee you, if you can find a good candidate to give to, whether it be someone right next to you or someone you've never met before, be careful. Don't just walk down to the Tenderloin of your local major city and try to hand out $5 bills. You will get mugged and you will get killed, most likely, right? But that's only because people have been reduced to their feral survival gears and they don't know what they're doing. If you plan it out like this comedian, he's actually a comedian too, but the magician comedian kid who went out and does all these pranks, and you give something to someone. Again, I've given to celebrities over and over and over again. I gave to celebrities, and I benefited tremendously. The rock and roll book that I put together for my buddy Bobby Blotzer, after he and Jim Clayton wrote it, and it needed editing and needed more sections in it and needed to be laid out. We needed to find the publisher and all this kind of stuff. I volunteered. I wanted to know how to do it in the first place because all my buddies had books out there, and who knows if I ever want to write something myself. But I went out and I figured it all out over months and months and months. I figured it out. We sold thousands of copies of this book. We're still selling them to this day, right? Now I have that in my portfolio. And now my buddy knows that when he's inviting people to events, he knows I'm a good guy. And he is more than compensated me financially. I get he never forgets to send me a check for the book royalties, right? He sends probably the majority off to the guy who wrote it with him, but he sends me great checks. It's awesome. And when we go to Havasu, he'll pick up the tab for half of it at least. I took him out for his great birthday on Havasu Lake several years ago, and it was phenomenal. But it's because I helped him with his website, helped him with his company, helped him with his band, and just being selfless. It was just, there's always a way to get it back, There's always a way for everyone to pay it forward. So that's what I got for you on giving. I encourage you to find a way to do it. Integrate it with your life. If you can mesh it with your professional capabilities, then do that too. Maybe you're just building a website at your house that's free to other people outside, and they can go to it and find what they need. I've got 4 or 5 websites that do that because I'm a fan of certain things in the world. And so I build sites that are for the fans and assets that are really hard to find. I found and I put them online for people, especially geeks looking for old computer stuff, right? I always say be good to yourself and someone else. Well, this is the episode all about that very thing. So I won't keep going. No, you feel me? Thanks for listening, especially if you made it this far. Again, if you have any ideas for episodes, keep them coming. The viewership is pretty damn steady. I don't know what we've done, but we've got a pretty good burst in subscriptions lately, so that's cool. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you haven't liked, please like. As I'm told, liking and commenting are the 2 things that make a video start soaring through the organic search. So I don't know if there's a lot to comment about personally. I doubt there is. The Moon Mission one, number 26, is actually doing really, really well. For a while there, the statistics on the page were, I was well into the 500s, and then it regressed back to the 470s. Someone actually dialed it back because I was looking at it growing every single day. And every once in a while, YouTube apologizes for numbers going up and down. But that one seems to be doing really well, and the debate's pretty heavy, so it's organically stacking up. So if you haven't seen episode 26 and you always want to know how they fake the moon missions and how they're going to fake the Mars missions and the logic behind why it is fake, go take a look. It's as most of the comments have revealed, it's not the standard moon hoax video. It's actually its own thing, and I've strung together a bunch of stuff that both the low-hanging fruit that everybody sees, but a lot of things that people never researched. And I know people that were involved with a lot of the projects that went on in the 60s, and so I've done a little detective work on my own and put it all into one video. So if you haven't gone, go to mkultraradio.com. There's our normal show, which is now sort of slowly happening because Kyle and I are now an hour and a half away one way, and both of us are very busy. And then there's the Deep Thoughts. This will be 48. So I really appreciate everyone watching. It's a privilege to have anyone like it or view it in general, because I hope hopefully we're all on the same bandwidth. And if anything, if these deep thoughts help you out, please pay that information forward. Pass it on. You don't have to say where you got the information. I don't care. This is not an ego trip for me. You don't hear my name in these episodes very often because it doesn't matter. If you get the information, you get the information. I'm not trying to build a big ego franchise. So that's it. So again, take care of yourself and somebody else. Rewind the video if you have any questions on how to do that, and we'll see you in the next episode. Over now.